I'm Fathery.
This is Dave.
This is Bryan.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 82nd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, your home for Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek old and new. And tonight, we are talking about Star Trek Into Darkness.
Easily our most anticipated outing since Star Trek V: The Final Frontier.
Yeah, this movie does get a lot of hate, but I know that it has its apologists out there.
Yeah, you're... Wait, did you just raise your hand? I thought we were talking off mic earlier, and I was the only one who was vaguely defending it.
No, I defend this movie.
Interesting, okay.
I think there's a lot in here that deserves to be defended, but there's also a lot of stuff in here that I completely understand why people have a problem with, and that I have a problem with myself.
At its heart, I think setting up a movie that you were going to spring on people that this was a stealth remake of the most popular Trek of all time, Wrath of Khan, was a recipe for fan backlash.
Yeah, and
it worked for me, by the way, I should say. I backlashed hard on it.
It works for you now, like you...
No, I meant it worked in the sense of triggering my backlash.
You had some issues back in 2013.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. That was Trek is Dead, Dave. And I felt that way a little bit about the first one. I think I was like, maybe if I watch it more, I'll like it. And then I saw this, and I was like, well, no, Trek is definitely dead.
Yeah, I remember that.
It certainly won't change your mind if you hated the 09 movie.
Bryan, what about you? What was your initial reaction to this?
I guess, whereas I thought the 09 movie was a really good action movie that wasn't Star Trek, I thought this was Star Trek, but it was mediocre Star Trek. So I really have trouble deciding which I like better. So...
Interesting.
Yeah, when I walked out of the theater on here, I wasn't disappointed. I had a good time, but there was some stuff in this movie that I kind of struggled with that I didn't think they handled as well as they could have or as well as they should have. However, I felt that I'd already made a lot of allowances with Star Trek 09, and so going into this, I was already being, kind of generous with some things, and I had assumed that most people who enjoyed Star Trek 09 would have enjoyed this as well. A lot of the problems that I think are in this movie kind of echo problems that I at least had with Star Trek 09. And I was really surprised to see people hating on it as much as they were.
Yeah. I think I was actually maybe a little bit hopeful for it because I had liked the visuals, and the first one had functioned on it, had as a sort of pop summer blockbuster with characters that I liked anyway. And I think I thought that they were going to do with this what a lot of people kind of felt that they did with Star Trek Beyond, which is a little more classic Trek. Benedict Cumberbatch was in it, and as far as I knew, he was not playing Khan, but would be some sort of villainous guy. And I was like, Benedict Cumberbatch seems like a great actor. I bet he's gonna kick some ass. So I think I actually reactivated my hopes. And then when it was very close to Trek 2009 overall in tone, my heart sank. Only this time I was had kind of built up some expectations or some hopes and dreams. So yeah, I did not like it, but having revisited again years later, I'm proving to be malleable.
Yeah, I actually, on my most recent rewatch of this, I liked it the least out of any time. But with kind of all three Kelvin movies, I have a love-hate relationship with all of them. And
very love-hatey movies.
I'll go ahead and say it, a little more love than hate. Mm-hmm. I have favorable opinions of all of them, but they all have stuff in them that I despise. and this movie has some of the stuff that I love most of the Kelvin.
What did you despise in Trek 2009?
The Nazi uniforms they wear at Starfleet Academy.
Those are back. Those are back with a vengeance in this one.
The uniforms in these movies are out of control. But also just this movie has some of the most stuff that I love in the Kelvin trilogy, but also some of the stuff that I hate the most in the Kelvin trilogy. And that's kind of how fast and loose they play with some of the Trek trappings that I think should be obvious enough to mainstream audiences that people should know, like, yeah, it doesn't make sense that you can have a warp drive take you that quickly from the heart of the Klingon Empire to Earth's moon and in a matter of seconds and some stuff like that. But
they were anticipating the final seasons of Game of Thrones and the travel time incidents.
They clearly have transporter technology in Game of Thrones.
That's right.
But
they call it dragons. Do we want to jump in with the summary and then just kick this thing off?
Sure. So this is what we call the transwarp summary, where we're just going to quickly refresh everyone on J.J. Abrams' Star Trek Into Darkness. Yep. I should also say written by Roberto, Orci, Alex Kurtzman, and Damon Lindelof.
Yep. Soon to be producing, he is producing the Watchmen thing on HBO right now, but you know him from Lost and The Leftovers and all that.
You don't have to date the podcast. Some people might be watching this when, like, Watchmen Season 5 is on.
I like them to have a sense of the year 1999 or 2019.
You don't even know what year it is.
I don't know what year it is.
That was 20 years ago.
We were talking about Space 1999 before the podcast, okay?
You've been frozen in a cryo tube like Khan.
I was resurrected to watch Star Trek Into Darkness. That's weird. What sort of weird torture have you prepared?
He's a little confused. We only thaw him out for this podcast. That's and the rest of the time he's in a closet.
So just keep that in mind. It probably makes some sense now.
We're gonna freeze him after this and thaw him out the next time they bring Khan back.
Yes.
God damn it.
But so here's our summary.
Punch it.
It's been 1 year since James T. Kirk took over command of the Enterprise. And as a starship captain, he is living his best life. He's seeking out new life and new civilizations, exploring strange new worlds, having three-ways with alien chicks. But he is still the reckless rebel we saw in the last movie. And that gets him in trouble with the brass when he breaks Star Trek's golden rule and violates the Prime Directive.
Gosh, I hope nobody else ever does that.
Admiral Pike, who is Kirk's boss now, chews his ass out and tells him he is being demoted to first officer because he apparently isn't ready for the chair. Now, across the pond in jolly old London, there are some very unjolly happenings when the Starfleet Records Archive is bombed. Per Starfleet operating procedure, the head of Starfleet, Admiral Marcus, calls a meeting at Starfleet HQ with all the captains and first officers in the region. Pike, Kirk, and Spock are all present. Marcus tells them, and the audience, that the man responsible for the bombing is John Harrison, a Starfleet intelligence operative who has gone rogue. And as they discuss, John Harrison makes a dramatic entrance when he shows up in a fighter craft and starts shooting up the building. Kirk is able to use his cunning tactical wits to disable the craft, but Harrison beams away, and the attack leaves Starfleet dad Christopher Pike dead. Scotty traces the transporter beam, and it turns out John Harrison used transwarp beaming to go to Kronos, the Klingon homeworld. If Starfleet were to go after him, it could start a conflict with the easily provoked warmongering Klingon Empire. Marcus meets with Kirk and Spock. He tells them the building bombed was no mere archive, but the base of Section 31, a secret Starfleet agency that does the dirty work the public can't know about. See DS9 for more. He says that John Harrison must be stopped at all costs. Marcus gives Kirk and the Enterprise 72 long-range torpedoes and orders Kirk to park on the Klingon border and shoot at Harrison's location. Kirk is ready to get revenge for Pike and accepts the mission. He returns to the Enterprise, where he gets a new crew member, a science officer called Carol Wallace. Spock is not a fan of this mission, though. He says it is immoral to attack sovereign Klingon territory without cause, and that these actions could start a war. On the ship, Scotty is also having objections when he doesn't want to let these new torpedoes he knows nothing about on board. He says they could interfere with the Enterprise's warp core. Scotty feels so strongly about this, he even walks out on Kirk and lets the Enterprise take off without him, forcing Kirk to make Chekhov the substitute chief engineer. But Scotty knew what he was talking about because the warp core does break down 20 minutes from Kronos. Kirk, Spock, Uhura, and a couple of red shirts take a recently confiscated smaller ship down to Kronos, where they get in a fight with Klingons and are actually saved by Harrison, who then surprises everyone by surrendering. Harrison is taken to the brig back on the Enterprise, where he confesses to Kirk that he isn't named John Harrison, but is actually the genetically enhanced Superman from the 20th century, Khan Noonien Singh. Turns out the new 72 torpedoes contain cryogenically frozen, genetically enhanced augments. Marcus was holding them hostage as they are the only thing Khan cares about, and he was using Khan to help beef up the military side of Starfleet. If that wasn't enough of a reveal, it turns out Carol Wallace is actually Carol Marcus, daughter of the Admiral, and on her own mission to expose what he is up to. But Admiral Marcus shows up himself on the USS Vengeance, his own personal attack ship, secretly developed behind Jupiter. The Enterprise makes it back near Earth's space before the Vengeance shoots her out of warp. The engines on the Enterprise are in really bad shape now, and Chekhov is having a hard time keeping the ship operational. Marcus orders the Vengeance to finish off the Enterprise, but the ship is stopped from delivering the kill shot because Scotty, it turns out, had snuck aboard the ship and disabled the weapon systems on the Vengeance. Khan and Kirk team up and infiltrate the Vengeance to stop Marcus. But Khan, of course being the evil bad guy, betrays Kirk, kills Marcus, and threatens Spock that he will blow up the Enterprise if Spock doesn't surrender the 72 torpedoes containing Khan's peeps. Spock agrees to the terms and beams over the torpedoes. Khan beams Kirk and Scotty back to the Enterprise, then betrays them again by beginning to attack the Enterprise, but Spock detonates the torpedoes, crippling the Vengeance. All the augments were removed from the torpedoes, though, and are safe aboard the Enterprise, still frozen. The Enterprise is still in bad shape, and is about to crash on Earth. Kirk is able to repair the warp core, but is killed by radiation exposure. The ship is saved, but Spock is enraged at the death of his friend, James Kirk. Khan and the Vengeance crash on Earth. Khan survives, and Spock beams down to beat his ass. Spock is able to take Khan alive, and, as luck would have it, Dr. McCoy is able to use Khan's super blood to revive Captain Kirk. With Khan put back on ice, and Kirk having learned lessons of responsibility as well as not letting revenge get the best of you, the crew reassemble on the Enterprise and take off for a 5-year mission of exploration. The end.
Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Christopher Pike's sideburns. I don't think they look so good.
They only really stand out to me in the bar scene. But when
I really wish everyone had the pointy sideburns of 60s Star Trek.
I mean, some people do.
Yeah,
some of them do. But
they work with it a bit.
They should all have the pointy sideburns.
Right, that was the
even Uhura should have pointy sideburns.
Federation standard back in the day. I don't know. Still, I was happy to have what's the actor who plays Pike?
Bruce Greenwood.
I was happy to have Bruce Greenwood back. He's always good at anchoring the dramatic stuff in the movies.
You know, I almost feel like they give him a little bit more to do in this movie than in Star Trek 09, which seems kind of weird. Because I think he might have more screen time in Star Trek 09. But I kind of feel like he's only doing 2 or 3 different things in Star Trek 09, and he does them well. But
when you actually captain the ship, it feels pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, like, here, like, we get to see him, like, get mad at Kirk. Yeah. Then we get to see him, like, die.
Yeah.
Like a death scene. That's a big deal for actors to do.
Yeah. You get to see more of a range of fatherly interactions between Pike and Kirk.
Yeah, he wasn't all just pep talks in this one. There was also yelling.
Yes. Yes. Much deserved yelling.
Yeah, before Starfleet Dad became Starfleet Dead.
But yeah, his, like, pork chop sideburns are a little distracting.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, they make everybody look so attractive in general in these movies. And he's a good-looking older dude. But then suddenly he's got these Mariner from the 1800s sideburns, and it ruins it. So I'm glad we got that. We worked through that.
I had those when I was in high school, but I also had a mullet, so high school fathery is probably not a good guy to get fashion tips from.
Also, I don't know, maybe that combo would have worked. I haven't seen Pike with a mullet yet, so something they can think about if they bring him back.
Wait, when you said elephant in the room, I thought you were going to talk about John Harrison turning out to be Khan.
No, I was fucking around.
That was part of like a big misdirection campaign by the movie and like the promotional material and stuff and like in interviews.
Did y'all know? I mean, like, because people guessed that he was Khan.
A lot of people were saying that.
But then they were like, no, it's not. And then I was like, well, he doesn't look like Khan. So, yeah, he's probably not Khan. He's probably some original villain.
At the time when I went into the theater, I had seen people on Facebook saying, oh, so they lied to us, but had managed to avoid any other spoilers. So I knew something that they had said in the press about this movie was a lie.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what. But when they said, oh, I'm Khan, I was like, okay, that makes sense.
So when you hear the name John Harrison, you don't think, well, this guy's going to be a big villain.
It's such an iconic name.
Right, yeah. We were talking off mic about Nero and the name being kind of a, you could argue, ham-fisted acknowledgement of the Roman Empire through the Romulans, their avatars in Star Trek. But it is a super memorable name, and I think it's the kind of larger-than-life stuff that sometimes works really well in the movies. John Harrison does not immediately feel something wrong.
So this is how, like, naive I was. Because I was convinced that he was not going to be Khan, and I just going off of the stuff that I had seen in the trailers, I was like, okay, there's so many reasons in here why I think he's not Khan. I was kind of thinking that Khan would be involved, but I was thinking that John Harrison would in fact be a genetically enhanced Superman, but not Khan. He would have been like one of his lieutenants or something.
Yeah.
And
makes some sense.
I was so convinced of that even like right before the movie came out, I saw like IMDb had listed Benedict Cumberbatch's character as Khan. And IMDb gets stuff wrong all the time, like before movies had come out. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at that and I was like, IMDb should know better. Like, people have seen this movie by now. There's, like, reviews of it available online. Like, how could they still be wrong on this?
What a goof up.
And then like, I go and see the movie, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I have to admit that his personality and dress sense and appearance just feels so not Khan to me.
Right.
That I have headcanoned that we have a situation where the first guy they thawed out, they said, we know that you're Khan's people. Are you Khan? And he looked over at the real Khan, who was frozen and still frozen, and said, yes, I am Khan.
What you're saying,
protect his...
What you're saying is we're seeing Joaquin.
Yes, or something, yes. That is how I headcanon this, and that the real Khan is in one of those torpedoes.
And, well... I like that theory, even though it kind of betrays the intent of the
absolutely,
the
absolutely betrays the intent. But I will do that to fix the movie I like.
He has Englishman evil about him. He feels like a Star Wars villain, somebody who should be on the Death Star.
And it is weird that they took a character who was originally played by a Mexican national actor, but he's supposed to be an Indian character,
right?
And they replaced it with this. Very Caucasian-looking guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now the comic book not Countdown to Darkness. The other was it called Star Trek Khan, I think. But it's basically set after this, and it's about Khan being put on trial, and it flash back to events before this movie, and they explain they just had plastic surgery, and they gave him a Northern European look because they thought that was the furthest thing from Indian you could get.
I mean, yeah, in a way that makes sense per the movie's reveal that he was supposed to be a stealth agent for them. They can't have a guy running around who looks like Napoleon or whatever, lest he be discovered.
I've also heard that J.J. Abrams originally wanted Benicio del Toro in this role, which if that had been the case, I would have been like, he's close enough to Ricardo Montalban. I think they might be doing Khan.
Ben Kingsley.
Oh, yeah. He's got sort of Shakespearean intensity and all that too.
Yeah, and he played an Indian guy before in the Gandhi movie.
Yes. So,
but he played the main Indian.
Yes.
But this is also what we call nowadays whitewashing. And
absolutely.
Even though this movie just came out in 2013, I think if they had made this movie just like a few years later, they would not have done that.
Yeah, they're I think after the various Scarlett Johansson mishaps, she kind of single-handedly ended up calling a lot of attention to it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it seems like it's much more in the public eye. Can I talk about how this movie got off on a bad foot with me?
Sure.
That's jumping back though to the beginning. I hate that the Prime Directive is kind of used so jokily by Kirk at the beginning.
Yeah, let's just talk about like that opening sequence,
which is actually it's not as intense as the first movie's amazing opening sequence, but it does work. I think, and it immediately kind of grips you like by putting lead characters in big danger and having an emotional kind of battle between them, like as to what should be done. You know, when McCoy's like, he would leave you to die.
I love the Naburi. I think that's the name of the planet.
Uh-huh.
But that opening sequence, which I actually saw that before I saw the rest of the movie, because they showed that at the beginning of The Hobbit, the first Hobbit movie.
Yeah, I think I must have too then,
and,
yeah.
I remember like visiting you in your comic shop that you manage and telling you about
Rogues Gallery.
And yeah, Rogues Gallery, Comics and Games in Round Rock, Texas. And I remember telling you about what you were
said
asking
paper
about
mache aliens.
And, well, no, I told you it was very, like, Indiana Jones, but it was cool because they were doing a very traditional Star Trek thing with the Prime Directive.
Right.
And I actually liked that. I thought it was, like, a great way to do very traditional Star Trek tropes in, like, the fast-paced, reimagine, action-y J.J. Abrams style within the context of a single scene in a movie.
Yeah. No, I thought it worked very well for doing that, and it set up that the happy ending we thought we got at the end of the last movie is not the happy ending. This Kirk is not ready for the chair. There are problems, and they need to be addressed, and I thought that was a very interesting hook.
You know, when we talk about the theme more as we get into it a little bit later on, definitely, like something the Elder Spock, Ambassador Spock, said in the first one was that they needed the two of each other.
Yeah.
And the vibe I got when I was rewatching this is that Kirk, like Spock has kind of learned something maybe from him, but that he maybe has not really learned from Spock yet.
I don't think Kirk actually changes much after he climbs aboard the shuttle to go to Starfleet Academy. The Kirk who says, I'll do it in 3 and walks in, he's basically the same Kirk at the end of the movie of 09.
But
it isn't until this film.
Part of this movie is Kirk learning from Spock.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That plays into a big part of the third act. But even here in this opening scene, Kirk is asking Dr. McCoy, what would Spock do if he was here and I was there when he's debating, should I save Spock from the volcano or let him die so I don't violate the Prime Directive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's obvious to him wouldn't even consider Spock's perspective on this.
And I love Dr. McCoy's line, which is very like judgmental against Spock, as Dr. McCoy is often portrayed to be.
Yeah.
But he just says, he'd let you die.
Yeah. It's a little cold, but it seems appropriate, and it gives the moment some gravitas. I did feel, by the way, that those aliens, although the scene works on its sort of own merits, were a little bit like the headhunters on Gilligan's Island. They were, like aliens as kind of, I don't know, almost slightly comical tribesmen.
It was meant as a giant, homage to the original series, and I think for that it functioned. It felt like
more of an homage
Star
to
Trek.
the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well,
I guess.
I think it had a bit of both.
Yeah.
But what about like the Enterprise being hidden underwater?
Yeah. What's up with that? Why would you hide the ship there?
They had said, like, I'm going to try and give the movie occasionally some credit and just give it, see if we could make it work. They said that there was weird ionic shit going on, and that's why they couldn't beam Spock out of the volcano. Yes. So transporters from orbit maybe don't work.
Yes.
And if they're going to save these guys, maybe they have to do something a little reckless like that. We all know it really existed, so they could do what I think is an amazing shot of the Enterprise rising up out of the ocean.
Yeah. But they can send shuttles down from orbit just as easily as they can launch shuttles from under the ocean.
Right.
In fact, probably easier. But so I was like, is it just to hide the shuttles from the locals? But I don't know how being underwater helps you hide.
If you were writing the novelization of it, and like if I were doing it and I needed to make that work for it, I think I would say there was something they were worried that the cold fusion bomb to stop the volcano, which is also stupid. If that didn't work, that they wanted the Enterprise itself to be on hand to do some crazy Enterprise shit.
Should come up with some headcanon that they need to be underwater to do special geological scans, and they need that massive dish to do the scans.
Right.
So they had to bring the ship underwater to get the data to make Spock's suitcase work.
Sure, let's roll with it.
Yeah, sure.
If you're feeling charitable towards the movie, you can roll with it.
Yeah.
If you're not, you can be like, well, they did it because they wanted to see it rise out of the water.
But it's so funny that they did that, because I often have said that J.J. Abrams made the Star Trek movies I would have made when I was 12. Because I actually remember being 12 years old and being in love with Star Trek and thinking about the Star Trek movies I wanted to make if I could grow up and be a filmmaker. And I often imagined a more action-y Star Trek. I often imagined characters listening to, modern day music instead of just only classical music. In my case, as like a 12-year-old, it probably would have been like Metallica or AC/DC. But sure, we can do Beastie Boys too. I had all like these ideas for things like Sulu's like fold out sword that he has in Star Trek. In Star Trek 09.
Lines up with an actual thing that you had as an idea.
Yeah,
as a kid.
like I imagined someone who had like a hilt of like a batleth, and they press a button on it, and then it creates like a holographic batleth on the rest of it, and you could like sword fight with that, kind of like the Star Trek version of a lightsaber. And then it was so funny watching Star Trek 09 because JJ did all of these things that I had thought of as a 12-year-old, that when I was a 13-year-old, I thought like, well, you can't do any of that in Star Trek. I was dumb for thinking that. But apparently it worked for JJ.
He made me perpetually 13.
The one thing I vividly remember thinking of is that I wanted to have a starship come down from space onto a planet and go underwater into the ocean.
Yeah.
Which then, when I got a little older, sounded like a terrible idea. But J.J. Abrams did it.
Well, we talked about the fact that he's like when we were talking about Trek 09, he's a very visual filmmaker. So on some level, he probably is literally just thinking, what can we do with the Enterprise? Where can we put it visually that we haven't seen before? We've seen it against nebulas and starfields and all that.
Yeah, what looks cool?
And so he's like, in the first movie, he gave us the shipyards on Earth, which, was always contrary to any canon that we'd ever seen for how starships are built. Here he gives us to us underwater. By the time we get to the next movie, it'll be flying around inside a space city in their in their like space sewers or whatever in Star Trek Beyond.
And we also get that cool transition from the guy drawing the Enterprise and the dirt.
Yeah.
And it's just so weird that like he had all the proportions right of the Enterprise.
Yeah, it could be their species has a
that's
special
what I thought.
talent.
It's a good segue though. Like it's very clean. It's a nice clean edit, and I did like that.
The touch I saw that scene the last time I watched it that I'd never noticed before. The scroll that they were all going nuts trying to retrieve is tossed in the corner in a rumpled heap. Their old religion is dead.
Oh, man.
And I was like, nice.
Wow.
Very nice.
I've never noticed that, but that is such a cool little detail.
Yeah, it is. It was like, I'd never spotted
that is
it.
straight up piece of the action.
It kind of hammers in how bad it was for Kirk to violate the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
Even though it's for totally empathetic reasons for the audience, you can understand why you would want to save Spock.
Yeah.
The vibe, for big summer movie, that his approach actually absolutely makes sense. But he acts like a kid who, like, the Prime Directive came up in one day of class at the academy, and he skipped out that day, and he barely knows what it is. Like, they would not mention it much. And so he's like, why is it so important, Spock? It's just, they saw a starship.
Well, I think from his perspective, it's like, all right, he understands this is important, this is how we do it, and why we do it. But he's like, the life of my friend versus... How many people actually believe in God anymore anyway? I suspect in the 23rd century, that's probably something that's really hard to wrap his head around.
So he's like, and also those are NPCs.
Yeah.
But I did want to say real quick, when Spock is in the volcano, there's some of that visual filmmaking that Abrams is really good at, is when he kind of thinks this is it. First of all, I like that Zachary Quinto?
Yes.
I couldn't say his name for a second. Yeah. His portrayal and his seriousness about it really comes through.
I think it's dumb when he just kind of like sticks his hands up and he's just like...
I really liked right before that, when he just kind of like, it looks like he's closing his eyes and kind of kneeling down, and it looks like he's just kind of, almost meditating. But then, he kind of does Jesus out a little bit, like with his hands out, and that part was a little goofy.
It felt silly and not in character.
The lead up to it, though, I thought was all really good.
I thought the fact that it wasn't in character was good because it lets us know something's wrong with Spock. We realize Spock's not right. If Spock was in a healthy state of mind, he wouldn't be doing that. So what's wrong with Spock?
Well, I mean, him generally adhering to the Prime Directive makes sense. Him being willing to die for it makes sense. So,
but him kind of wanting to end his life is that's I think that's what that.
Yeah, you definitely he seems to lean into it. So I think you were picking up on what they were wanting you to pick up on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the London stuff. We see Mickey from Doctor Who.
Yes, in a very serious role. This is one of those scenes where where Abrams drops out the sound effects and goes pure music. It's a really beautiful, haunting piano piece composed by Michael Giacchino.
It is weird to hear in a Star Trek movie just the straight-up piano music, which is very different from the typical musical aesthetics of Star Trek.
Right, but it's the whole orchestra, usually.
It is a very good tune that they create for these sequences and for Khan himself. When we get, like, the Khan theme when they introduce him, it's almost too dramatic when Mickey meets him at the hospital and he says, "Who are you?" and then, like, the camera zooms in on him and it's just like, well, okay, we get it. This is like the big bad of the movie.
Yeah. Abrams can overplay his hand a little bit dramatically. I did notice it's almost an inversion of Trek 09. So Trek 09 has a very serious opening scene and then kind of cuts to more comedic stuff as you watch young Kirk. This one opens comedically and then has the dramatic scene that's going to, like, make you pay attention as you see, like, a child's life is in danger.
You know what's crazy about that? Is when this was attached to The Hobbit before the movie came out, just to promote the movie. What I was talking about earlier, the first time I saw any footage from this movie beyond the trailers, they had those reversed. It actually opened with with Mickey from Doctor Who
putting the explosive Alka-Seltzer.
Well, no, it doesn't go that far. But it's just like him going to visit his kid in the hospital and meeting Khan and saying, "Who are you?" And we get, like, that push in on Benedict Cumberbatch. Then it cuts from that to all of the Prime Directive Nimbaru.
All the alien planet stuff.
I like the theater version better.
I think probably changing it up just a little bit from the previous one is probably good, if only to break the pattern. But that's interesting.
I think we want to get our day in the life of our heroes, and then now we start the plot of our movie.
It gives you a hint of what they've been doing this last year. When you start in media res, with a cold open, like you would do in, like, a James Bond movie or something, where you're like, oh, this is like a typical mission for them. This is what they've been doing for the last 12 months.
Do you think they did the switcheroo just for that trailer preview?
I mean, I don't know. It might have been something they were going back and forth.
It kind of makes sense.
But
it kind of makes sense that they would leave on a kind of a fun note, so that's what you end on in your little micro preview.
Actually, the way that they ended things was with Spock in the volcano, where it looks like he's about to die, and that's where they stop.
So give it a
little bit of cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But we have the Royal Children's Hospital of the 23rd century.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool when we can kind of see some Earth stuff in the future. We don't see a ton of that in Star Trek, so anytime we can kind of get an idea of what Earth life is like in the 23rd or 24th century.
I kind of like the mixture of aesthetics where this hospital had kind of an old look to it, but you would see little bits of technology here and there.
Well, I've heard other fans mention this, and I have to agree. J.J. does future Earth, and better, I think, than anybody does in Star Trek history.
I gotta say, I think having the budget for it maybe...
Well, that's some of it, but it feels like this could be our Earth. This feels like it feels like I could be walking around in this world. Whereas future Earth in most other Star Trek kind of feels like sets and matte paintings.
Right.
That it wouldn't it doesn't feel like my world.
You don't mean the tone of it, you mean how it's visually depicted.
Yeah, well, just
like, you
the
don't
tone.
mind, like, when they show Starfleet Academy and stuff in, like, a Wesley Crusher episode, you're just like, this could have been so much more believable.
It doesn't feel like, it feels like an alien planet.
Right.
It does not feel like my planet.
Right.
It feels like some other planet.
I think DS9 did a good job of that.
Yeah, it did better than most, but I think as far as making me feel like this is my Earth, this one, maybe if I visited New Orleans, I'd feel more like that for DS9.
DS9 did pretty much everything better than any other part of Star Trek.
It's hard to argue with that.
No, we also get the introduction of, like, the super blood plot here, which I think is kind of like a weak thing in the movie, how Khan's blood seems to cure everything. It can cure this kid with a disease. It can cure death from radiation. It doesn't even have to be human. It can cure this alien animal from another planet who's been dead for we don't know how long or from what, but it can cure a tribble. So this is like Khan's blood is kind of treated in this movie as like an instant cure for death. I wish that they would have established some parameters about give it some limitations.
That's not what they do on this show. And it occurs to me that that's one of the things that they took from these movies and gave to Discovery. I like Discovery quite a bit, but they will just gloss over stuff like that just as quickly as the Abrams movies.
Yeah. No, I like what they do with the super blood in the end, but it does feel like you're kind of risking breaking the universe, as some fanboys would say.
If you can like cure any death, no one can die now. So.
The funny thing is though, like, it's pretty easy within these kind of genre stories to come up with artificial limitations, like, saying that, it only works at 1 in 100 times, or...
They do talk about how it was really hard for Kirk to come back. McCoy actually says, this was not easy, the blood nearly killed you.
He says it took a while. He says, like, you were out for, like, a week or something.
Yeah,
but you can set up parameters wherein, like, exposure to even just, like... particles in the 23rd century will alter it, and so he's like, it's not even going to work after a few months or something like that. Like, yeah, the ones that did now, yes, but they won't be able to recreate it after time. Like, you could come up with that, but again, that's not an interesting conversation to have for these characters.
I mean, they could have had it be Mickey's wife who had ended up in a hospital due to a radiation accident. And kind of set up, no, it only cures radiation damage.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
So, I mean, you could have it be a little girl, but how did a little girl get exposed to radiation on a perfectly safe 23rd century planet?
That would be harder to explain.
Yeah. Whereas, his wife or something.
Thinking about that moral quandary that Mickey was put in. Like, he's like, to save your daughter, would you go and kill dozens?
I like how we keep calling this guy Mickey.
Yeah.
But no, he was an asshole, but he's an asshole. Like, I can understand being in that situation.
That was a Section 31 base. They reveal it wasn't the Starfleet archives. It was actually a Section 31 base. He was blowing up Starfleet's dirty trick department. Yeah, he probably was feeling pretty guilty about everything he'd done there for his whole career, and was like, if I have to die, erasing all the mistakes I've made is not a bad way to do it.
Okay, I take back what I just said. Bryan made a good case there.
I wish I forgot that. Yeah, the whole reason that Khan approached him was because of that job.
But he does send that mission. He does send that transmission to Marcus. Right before he pulls the trigger on the bomb.
I forget exactly what did he say to Marcus.
Was it sorry or was it a?
He just let him know what had happened.
I'm under duress. Yeah. You have to imagine terrorist bombing something when that's not what you do. Probably felt a little bit extreme, even if you thought your job was dodgy.
But I think it also killed like innocent people. The size of that explosion, it took out other people in London.
Well, they said it was 42 people or something. They actually quote the number.
Yeah, sadly they didn't hit your big one, Father.
Given the size of the explosion, it was a very small number.
They could have kept under wraps all the Section 31 people in there and just made it sound like it was only a small number of people working in the
42.
Well, okay, so all the extra deaths were the assholes.
I don't. But the thing is, this part of the movie was supposed to feel like a terrorist attack. That was supposed to be like 9/11 or the 7/7 bombings. And Khan is basically an allegory for Osama bin Laden. And that's kind of the allegory of this movie.
What's interesting, though, is that, like, up until kind of close to the end, like, you see him kill Pike, and that feels pretty extreme. But then you kind of get the sense that he's been, like, so pushed and prodded by Admiral Marcus that he seems sympathetic. He helps Kirk out any number of times. He saves the day a few times.
But he the whole time where he's helping Kirk, and they play with us in the movie, like, any second he's going to betray Kirk. And then he finally does.
Right.
Well, after Kirk betrays him first. But it does seem like I'm going to wipe out your whole ship is a bit of a drastic response to you stunned me in the back after I helped you. So, yeah, I think in the end, Khan is a bad guy, but...
For sure. But until, like, Spock said something like that your idea of going back to how things were was to, like, wipe out anybody you consider genetically inferior, I was like... They're definitely toying with making the audience like him. They definitely wanted him to be a guy who was a dangerous person, but maybe a likably dangerous person, and maybe an even honorable guy ultimately.
It's hard to hate him until he decides to blow up the Enterprise.
Part of the allegory of mirroring this terrorist that is a threat to you, but also you're kind of responsible for.
Yes.
Right.
That mirrors like the relationship between the United States and the CIA and Osama bin Laden. Well, I was gonna say like go read some Wikipedia articles if you don't know what I'm talking about. But like as far as like the United States was largely responsible for the creation of Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda. And then it came back to bite the U.S. in the ass when there was a terrorist attack and civilians died. And then the total wrong reaction was to wage an illegal war in Iraq, which Admiral Marcus is trying to do here with the Klingons. With the Klingons, which is totally the wrong way to react to the problem with Khan, which he is responsible for himself.
Yes, right.
Which ties into Kirk's arc about taking responsibility and ownership of things.
Yes.
And not just being like gung-ho, reactionary, let's go get revenge type of mentality.
And this is why this is a Star Trek movie and 09 probably isn't, this is about something.
Right. 09 tried to be about a bunch of different things and was kind of mostly about action movie themes.
I'll disagree with myself from last week's 09 discussion just a little bit. I'll say that it was about something that it's about, kind of similar to this, about like how you should react to things that have happened to you in the past. You should try to take a positive approach and try to like use the past to like inspire you to do better, and like use tragedy to like teach you,
and not use it to collapse Vulcan.
Not turn into like an evil asshole like Nero, or try to be a slacker like Kirk was trying to be in like the beginning of the movie. But it's not a very well conveyed message. And it's debatable if that was even the intent of the storytellers in that movie. Where this movie has like a very clear story, not as relevant in 2013 as it would have been if it came out a few years earlier.
Right.
It's a little late to the party when...
But arguably the United States has never kind of fully owned up to that.
Well, but I think, like people on both sides of the aisle now will tell you like, the war in Iraq was a mistake.
Right.
And so it is kind of a safe thing to discuss now, and it was kind of
That's
safe
true.
in 2013, but
because it's safe
doesn't
mean just because it's safe doesn't mean it wasn't relevant or meaningful. So
Right.
and it wasn't a message that needs to be pushed out there sometimes.
Do y'all want to talk about like some of the Starfleet drama with Kirk and Pike in that scene where he gets his ass chewed out?
It felt very much like what everyone complained about for the last movie is right there coming out of Pike's mouth. And it reframes the entire ending of 09 to say, yeah, Kirk was not ready for the chair. Kirk is still is brilliant and talented and has enormous potential, but he is not ready to be a captain. And I really liked that sequence, and I like it more every time I watch it. I also love the Spock Kirk interplay with "you betrayed my friendship" and "dude rules" and and responsibility and the way
they're wearing Nazi uniforms this whole time.
To be honest, I never even noticed that till you pointed it out, and I have to admit, now that you pointed it out, it would be a creative decision I would avoid. But if I was in charge, But yeah, and what's the lesson from all this? Never trust a Vulcan. You're like, oh god, Kirk is
they
so
made call him pointy. Like
he's dropping racist terms,
which was established in Enterprise. So I guess props for good like continuity.
Yeah.
But I thought that was kind of like a stupid, uncreative, derogatory slang term to be used in Enterprise.
It's a cheap crowd pleaser joke that probably got decent laughs at the theater.
What?
By the way, I did realize that. Weirdly, Star Trek functions here kind of like X-Files stuff does. They do this throughout the movies in the sense that the big drama very often is they're getting shut down or the team is getting broken up. And the big celebration is when it all gets back together. So yeah, what is it? Kirk's hoping to get he actually thinks they're going to get a 5-year mission ship.
Yeah, that's what he's hoping for.
I thought that was cool that they established that's like the hot shit to get if you're a captain.
When he got like that phone call when he was in bed with the two chicks who Damon Lindelof said they were supposed to be Caitians, but I don't think they look like cat-like enough to be Caitians.
Well, you have hairless cats, you have hairless Caitians.
I guess. But yeah, when his orgy is interrupted, he's all excited because he thinks he's getting the call that he's going to be given the 5-year mission, but instead he's actually going to get in trouble and end up being demoted to first officer.
Well, that also shows he's not good at reading the room.
Yeah. They also they're going to send him back to the academy, and then Pike goes to bat for him and gets
Yeah, we get that bar scene, like the two of them at the bar.
Yeah. J.J. Abrams likes scenes in bars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with pep talks.
Well, it was obviously a callback to Star Trek '09, which is kind of a problem I have with this movie, is that it is very derivative of both Star Trek '09 and The Wrath of Khan.
You know what's interesting,
Well,
though?
from the point of view of Kirk's journey, this is one story. These two movies are inextricably linked as far as Kirk's story.
It's like Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
Yeah.
I don't like that approach either, because it feels like we're kind of going like 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards with Kirk, and I would have just rather they streamlined it and made Star Trek '09 end with Pike as the captain and Kirk as the first officer, and then you still could have done like this type of story where Pike dies and Kirk has to become the captain, instead of being like, oh yeah, he's ready to be captain. Oh no, he's not. Oh well, now he is.
Yeah.
I would have liked a more smoother approach.
I would approve of that version, but this is what we've got, and they need to be tightly joined to do what they decided to do with them. As a trivia note, they tried and actually fully shot the Pike office scene going all the way to. Originally, there was more to it where he actually ends up saying, okay, you're going to be my first officer on the ship. And the scene never worked, going from, I'm really mad at you from lying, to, I'm going to give you a job as my sidekick on the ship. So they eventually decided they were just going to have to break it up, go back, do reshoots, and have the bar scene was a very late addition to fix that, because they couldn't stick those two ideas together.
Yeah, it sounds like that wouldn't have worked as well.
Yeah, it was apparently not.
I love Pike's Admiral uniform. It's very reminiscent of the motion picture, which I tend to not praise the uniforms of that movie too much, but for some reason I like it here. It's like the very like laid back, comfortable.
If nothing else,
it
feels removed from the vibrant colors of the frontline explorers.
But then we get like the big powwow between all the captains and first officers.
Yes.
You know what's funny to me about that?
What are those creepy round tables that you always know that these are really the bad guys when you've got the round table with the round lights above it?
They should have been smoking some cigars.
Yeah. You're no fighting in the war room.
Yeah, a little Dr. Strangelove there.
Yeah.
We meet that captain from the USS Bradbury. He has like one line.
Yeah.
I'm like, that guy seems like a pretty cool Starfleet captain.
What was his one line?
He was just like, I'm the captain of the USS Bradbury.
Oh, well, I guess that's cool. I mean, it's a cool name. I thought it was funny that this scene, Kirk's meant to have like kind of a big revelation moment that if he kind of come up with it a little bit earlier might have saved him, but that they didn't see. It's weird to me that Kirk's big realization was a regulation thing. Of all things for him to be good at recognizing, solving that particular mystery doesn't seem like his forte. Yeah. I know it functions in the scene to have him be a little bit more quick on the uptake than the rest of them.
It also shows he was a little suspicious, because he was like, why would this guy attack as like a normal archive? These are all public records. And it's a cool little display of the future technology, that screen that he's manipulating to like zoom in, and you can actually like spin it around like a different angle.
3-dimensional version of like a touchpad or a phone.
That's how like the scanning technology would work. If you're not like recording video, but if you're actually scanning the environment, and then the visual you get is like a computer generated representation of what your scans picked up, you would be able to have that 3D view of it.
Yeah, like a fancier version of the thing in Blade Runner. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, just zoom in and enhance.
Yeah.
But yeah, Khan gets the drop on them and attacks, and it is kind of that cliche thing of like, right when someone's like, wait, if someone was going to do this, now would be the perfect time to, oh no, and then then the attack begins.
Yeah, JJ is kind of that filmmaker. There's several times when that happens.
Last week, Bryan pointed out how good JJ is at making it feel like you're in a shitstorm, and the threat is so real and so present, and it's just like danger raining down on you. Mm-hmm. And we get that here when Khan is attacking.
Killing off Pike is a good way to do that. But it's also like,
during the action,
right? I was going to say it's the soundscape they create. Their phasers have like I think I mentioned Saving Private Ryan last week, and I think they look to the way they implemented sounds in that, so that you're hearing ricochets and screams, and there's a sense of like these things really feel like they would hurt or kill if they tagged you. Yeah. So it feels more warlike than the somewhat pristine look of, say, Star Trek The Next Generation's battles.
Though from a technical point of view, the big monstrous phaser cannon, presumably on the shuttle that Khan is using, does way less damage than than one of those little crickets on Disintegrate, as far as the amount of damage being done to the room per shot.
Right, or just a bomb or something.
Yeah, you could have just shot one torpedo in there. And...
Well, I get that the shuttle probably doesn't have torpedoes, but it should be vaporizing entire chairs
you could have
with
just
every shot.
kamikazed the shuttle into there and then beamed out. It was the last one that beamed out.
This was I was trying to think because there's various lies that Admiral Marcus tells about it, including about Section 31 and stuff like this. When Khan shows up here, this isn't part of Marcus's manipulation or anything, is it?
No, this is...
No. He's really wanting just straight revenge.
Yeah,
for Marcus trying to hold
he knows
his
how
guys hostage.
He knows how dangerous Khan... Are you talking about Khan or Marcus?
I'm actually talking about Khan. Was he there to legitimately attack them and
I think
people?
he wanted to kill Marcus.
And did Marcus have his guys as hostage at that time?
Yeah, but he doesn't know
Khan thinks they're dead at this point.
Okay. Because I was thinking you don't kill the guy who's holding the hostages and think they're going to do all right.
He thinks his hostage... I had every reason to believe that he had killed Michael.
There you go.
Yeah, because you don't do that to Khan and then walk away. He's gonna come after your ass.
Yeah.
If there's one guy the man knows, it's how to hold a grudge. If we know anything about Khan,
yes.
But we get the mind meld of Spock and Pike, and
I actually love Spock's line later when he's trying to explain his own need to push away emotion. When he says he felt what Pike felt, and it's fear. Anger, confusion, and it's a really kind of sad description of his death, but it sounds very accurate.
Yeah, it's I think it's hard for humans to think about what facing death is actually like,
right?
And I think we intentionally or not intentionally, subconsciously try to not think about it because it actually does sound terrible.
Right. It's also something that we can't wrap our head around completely.
But it's something
non-existent
that we're all going to go through. Yeah. So hate to be a buzzkill.
Just imagine it's like going to sleep.
It's true. It's just that there's always the assumption you get to wake up.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
But so I've heard some people have complained about Spock doing a non-consensual mind meld with Pike, maybe he didn't want to have all of his memories stolen by someone, but
I actually wasn't sure why he mind melded. It felt like he was helping him ease, he was definitely dying, and Spock kind of helped the transition.
Or just the Vulcan thing, you take someone's katra when they die, so they can live on in some form.
Yeah, but we've never seen any signs that they would try to apply that to humans, especially without consultation.
I mean, the movie doesn't say.
And
on the other hand,
the
Spock-Pike relationship in the menagerie is pretty tight.
Yeah.
He's willing to throw away everything to help Pike.
Yeah, so the Spock of the Prime universe, he'll do anything to help out Pike. He's you're not going to spend the rest of your life miserable in this chair. I'm going to take you to where you can have crazy, awesome sex fantasies with this beautiful blonde chick.
Go ahead.
Or Talos 4.
Yeah, or whatever color hair you want her to have. But
and mind melds are always kind of non-consensual. That's kind of...
It might be that they've mind melded several times before. Maybe it's not a thing between the two of them at this point.
Maybe it is a thing between the two of them at this point.
Yeah.
They're
Pike
really
/
close.
Spock. Okay.
Like I said, I always read it as, or at least my gut reaction was that he was sort of helping him ease into death, and it was clearly an empathetic thing. I think mind melds as an idea are a trope that probably really hasn't been thought about too much as far as how it needs to be maybe updated to take into sort of some very modern ideas about consent. But certainly I don't think I ever thought about it as non-consensual as this one. In this one, it seemed like a healing, obviously helpful thing to do.
Kirk also does some cool hero stuff.
He does some Die Hard stuff. He's using fire hoses.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It is weird
to see a fire hose in Star Trek, but whatever, it worked. Yeah. It makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I think that they would have fire suppression robots that would look like the dumb Star Trek Discovery robots.
Oh no, those are terrible. I never want to see that again.
You're right. Maybe it's fire hoses all the way.
When Khan and Kirk have that first eye contact between the two of them.
Yeah.
When his craft is spinning out of control and then he beams away. And it's kind of cool because you see Khan is defeated, but he's in such control of everything, he can just do his cool little escape.
Yeah. Right.
And
he does not look like a guy who's been caught off guard.
But it's also kind of dumb, action movie schlocky stuff. It's really dumb and really cool at the same time.
You ever see?
And I dig it. The music makes it work.
I loved it because it's okay, we've been hashing on how terrible Kirk is throughout this first part of the movie, but we do see that he has value. He has talents. Look at the way he took out that ship single-handedly, and I think we need to be reminded at that point that there is something. There's still a diamond in that rough there.
He uses his wits. He's still like the cunning tactician, that the Romulan commander in Balance of Terror is he's a sorcerer, this one.
Yes.
He will also, after getting basically firing Scotty or letting him quit over the torpedoes shortly thereafter, he will kind of rein in his stuff and start to see through clearer eyes as he takes Mr. Spock's input and Scotty's input into things. I did think it was funny, by the way. Scotty is so adamant about those torpedoes in a series that really doesn't do technobabble or talk about any technical specifications. Yeah. He's really sure that these photon torpedoes could mess with the pattern.
Well, that's so stupid that these torpedoes are going to make the warp core break down. That they had to have someone really hammer that in to try to sell it. Because it's they use these torpedoes as the red matter of this movie.
Worse than the red matter. So
yeah, it is a lot worse. The red matter took care of anything they needed to be fixed in the last. So time travel, doomsday machine, black holes, all that stuff. Okay, red matter.
But at least you can say, well, we don't know what red matter is. Maybe you can do that. The torpedoes are used to push the plot in various directions in contradictory ways. They don't, even within the context of just the film itself, ignore everything else you know about torpedoes, they don't make sense.
Here's a quick question. So we know that he brought Admiral Marcus brought Khan back so that they needed a hawk in an era of doves to develop weapons and strategies, right? So he was actually doing weapon design, which doesn't completely make sense because he's a few centuries behind.
Yeah, he's from 1996.
I could see perhaps that he looks at the technology and figures out this is how to weaponize this. This is how to weaponize that. This is how to maximize in a battlefield this type of
Federation was like, we're going to just do things that kind of scare people that are just loud sounds, and he's like, no, make it kill them.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to develop these torpedoes for him. And he knew that Marcus had 72 of his other guys from the Botany Bay hostage. And he's like, I was going to make 70, the exact number of torpedoes that he has hostages, and secret them out and hopefully get them out from under Marcus's nose.
Yes.
That was the idea, right?
That's what they tell us.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that, because it is, just woefully dumb.
It is woefully dumb, and maybe he was planning at some point to be able to launch them to get the people away.
Even if he had just said, I made 100 torpedoes, 72 of them have my guys in them.
Yeah.
But he made the exact number.
But then when Marcus is
their names are on the torpedoes.
Then when Marcus is like, okay, I gotta kill Khan, he's going rogue, I'm gonna send the sap Kirk to go kill him and start my war with the Klingons. I better give him all 72 of these torpedoes and tell him to shoot all of them at Khan.
And then they say that the fuel supplies have been replaced with the people, the bodies. So when the time came to launch them,
they're just gonna be floating out in space.
They just would have, they would not have launched. They wouldn't have gone to warp. They wouldn't have gotten anywhere near Kronos.
I get why Scotty couldn't scan the torpedoes because they were classified, but you would think Marcus would have scanned them at some point.
Nobody checks. Yeah, we have this super genius building us super weapons. Do you have anyone looking over his shoulder because he's like a mass murderer who might want to take over the world? Oh no, we have no supervision on the construction.
No wonder his plan backfires.
Did you double check all the missiles so they don't just explode as soon as we hit the launch command? Because that's the evil sort of thing Khan might do. No, we didn't check anything, sir.
And it's also weird to me that I guess Marcus just flat out tells Kirk and Spock about okay, so there's this thing called Section 31, which in DS9 was such a top secret thing that no one knew about. And
Kirk's gonna die. It doesn't matter.
yeah, he's sending him on a suicide mission. But I was also just so thrilled in 2013 to be
That
like,
they dropped him.
these people watched DS9.
Yeah,
Yay!
yeah. It was a very good use of Section 31.
Let's talk about another callback to a Trek continuity bit.
Well, I did have one question.
Okay, yeah.
Does Marcus know that the body, that Khan's crew are in the missiles or not?
I don't think so.
he does.
I don't think he does.
But it's so bad. Everything attached to the torpedoes is so stupid that it's like a beautiful donut with a pile of shit stuck in the hole.
Maybe he did, and he was like, I can get rid of these 72 assholes also.
But then they replace the fuel supplies, so they're not going to go.
If he doesn't know that, though, then he's also like, I guess I just misplaced those 72 hostages. Yes. Oh well. I'm starting my war with the Klingons.
He doesn't
now,
tell.
So.
Well, there are 73 people loose, and we've got to find them.
Now let's think about this. If this is meant to be a little bit analogous to the post 9/11 era, then he's what, the George Bush of the era. Yeah.
Well,
so maybe he's more. He's what, the Cheney?
I was thinking he's more the Dick Cheney.
Absolutely. But maybe he's got a little, he's an amalgamation, and he's got a little bit of George Bush's foresight in it, which is to say no foresight. The only good thing that they got out of those is that Khan's the acting from Benedict Cumberbatch is, I think, pretty strong.
Yeah, he gets
when he talks about his
men,
he does a pretty good job. I noticed, by the way, that the Chris Pine, plays Kirk. That he also can kind of tear up pretty intensely, like when he's talking.
I think he looks so out of his league when he's having those scenes with Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah,
I have to agree. It works because he's supposed to be out of his league.
Yes,
we're supposed to feel that way, but it's like, ooh, we've got acting and then acting.
Oh, actually, I was thinking about a different scene, though. I was thinking about the scene with Pike, where Pike says he's made him his first officer, and he realizes this guy has gone to bat for him once again.
I mean, when you have Pike and I'm sorry, when you have Kirk and Khan on screen together.
Yeah, I don't think I ever thought about the discrepancy between them, because Kirk is supposed to be the hothead, and he's supposed to be the calculator, at least.
Sure, it works for the movie.
Yeah, it works for the movie. Yeah. It's like, if you get exactly what you need. Shatner doesn't necessarily have the widest range, but he's perfect at what they get him to do.
Right.
And Chris Pine doesn't have Cumberbatch's range, but he's perfect for what he needs to do. So,
but Dave, you were about to mention Carol Marcus joining the crew.
She's kind of more of a plucky sidekick in this. Once they establish she's not evil,
she seems incredibly unnecessary for this movie.
Yeah, and Spock outright says she's unnecessary.
I think she was supposed to be a setup for the next one, but then she's not in the next one.
Yeah,
I think this was all supposed to be set up a love story for the third movie or the third.
I wonder they did establish that McCoy tries to hit on her, and since they're trying to change things up, I wonder if they might have had a thing where she does end up with McCoy.
I don't think that would have happened. I think they just needed some fun dialogue there.
Maybe, but had she and Kirk really connected by the end of it?
I mean,
obviously they were destined, but then things are already off track, and her is already with Spock.
Carol Marcus strips down to her underwear behind Kirk and tells him don't turn around, and
very
a really
cheekily.
Really weird situation of it was completely unnecessary to take your clothes off right there next to someone, tell them not to turn around, and then he turns around. So I'm not sure if he's just asshole peeping Tom, or if she's just kind of an asshole exhibitionist. But
Kirk's the asshole peeping Tom. I think that is absolutely.
They are talking about what their plan to do is, and I kind of got the vibe that it was supposed to be he was just innately I want to, as I'm talking about this, turn and face you, and then he's like, whoa.
It doesn't really make sense for her to change her clothes right there next to him when he's not even going on the shuttle mission.
Yeah.
And I'm also not really sure why she needed to change clothes to go mess with that torpedo. But they were going to do that scene in space originally, so it kind of made more sense if she was putting on a spacesuit.
Yeah.
But
for sure it's there. It's there as eye candy.
And it's there to make Kirk look like a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Which we don't need. He already kind of looks like an asshole too.
We've checked that box. We don't need it. So that is one of the big annoying scenes in the movie.
And
we get it. This Kirk isn't there yet. He's a loser.
But we do have Carol Marcus from the Wrath of Khan included. Yeah. Another callback to classic Trek. We have a mention of mud when they take the ship confiscated from the mud incident.
Yeah. I really like little callbacks like that because they make you sense that there was these sort of what would be episodic adventures of the old show.
Which you could read in the ongoing Star Trek comic series written by Mike Johnson. Which, it wasn't in that. It was in the miniseries.
Is that the one that revealed it was actually Mudd's daughter?
That was the miniseries Countdown to Darkness, which was a prequel to this movie, where it was in fact Mudd's daughter, who looks like she's half Bajoran.
She is, yeah.
And I think the reason why they did that is because they didn't want to show Mudd in case they were going to use him for Star Trek 3, and they don't know what actor it would be, so they don't know how to draw the guy in the miniseries and the comic.
Don't want to run into the Jabba the Hutt syndrome, where they had Jabba show up in the comics, and then suddenly he's there in Return of the Jedi and looks completely different.
Yeah, he's not like a yellow humanoid anymore.
Yeah.
Kirk, by the way, right around this time that they're going down to Kronos...
With Hendorf, he's back.
Yeah, Hendorf gets a word or something in there. He does, at that point, decide that his character has some character growth and decides that he is going to capture Khan and not kill him or assassinate him. So
he gives in to Spock.
He distinguishes himself, a little bit from the hawkish side of the military side of Starfleet.
And they keep that at the end. They don't kill Khan, which originally when I saw the movie, I thought, this feels unsatisfying that Khan survived this film. And then never comes back. But then in hindsight, the whole point was bring him back to trial is the civilized thing to do. So we can't then turn around and kill him at the end of the film without looking like we're that.
I almost wish that movie had like a denouement where there was another face-off between Kirk and Khan through bars or whatever, through the plexiglass thing, that somewhat articulated that. Because as it is, Spock is in mid punching him when Uhura's like, we need his blood or whatever. And then they just kind of cut away. And it's so
he switches to one of those classic undercut, a knockout punch instead of
and then they cut away. I guess, But it's so that they can have a little bit of a surprise, or just they can kind of draw out the suspense of Kirk's resurrection.
Yeah.
But anyway, I am glad that to see midway through the movies, Kirk is already reasserting a more Kirk-like personality.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as these Kelvin
even
movies,
if a very Star Wars scene is about to show up.
As these Kelvin movies go on, the Chris Pine Kirk becomes a lot closer to the Shatner Kirk of TOS.
Yeah.
And
it's just a little bit more of a hot dogger, maybe.
Well, we get, a couple of key points in this movie where Kirk develops, which is pretty much almost completely absent in the first one. We get the scene where he says, Spock's right, we're not going to kill him.
Yeah.
And then later on...
That's when he's talking to the crew, right?
Yeah.
We don't know that he's going to do it, and Spock doesn't know he's going to do it until
he's got to mess with Spock. Yeah. He's going to admit he's right. He can't just walk up and say, Spock, you were right and I was wrong. He's got to find an interest.
You want to talk about the Klingons and Kronos?
Sure.
Not really.
So these Klingons, I love the idea of having them behind the masks, behind those helmets, and we don't know if they're bumpy-headed or smooth-headed. I thought that was such a smart way to handle it, and that was developed for a deleted scene, which they shot for Star Trek 09, where there were going to be Klingons in Star Trek 09, but they cut that. And
is it just for them to be coy? Because why not pick a side?
Because if it's not a movie about the Klingons, I think you don't want to put that much effort into
But they do pick a side. They pull a helmet off.
But yes, they do pick a side in this movie. They pull a helmet off. And this Klingon really bothered me in 2013 because I thought he looked so weird with all those gold piercings. A lot of people call him the Bling-On. It no longer bothers me because this is so much better than anything they did in Star Trek Discovery with Klingons. I say this honestly, it no longer bothers me when I watch this.
Honestly, it looks a lot like a Discovery Klingon to me, but...
Well, I say a little better because he doesn't have a weird elongated head.
Right.
And they
Season 2 Discovery Klingon.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the other Klingons that are all wearing those helmets, but we see guys who have long flowing hair or beards sticking out the front of the helmet. So it's that guy's just a weirdo that he was bald. It's there's plenty of Klingons that have hair though. There's normal Klingons in there.
I didn't like the masks. I feel like if they had looked a little, maybe just more aesthetically cool to me, I think I might have been on board them. But they bugged me because I feel like I immediately want to see Klingons and all their barbarian flowing hair glory.
I totally liked the design for this film. I thought that was great, and that's what I would have done for Discovery if I had been them. I was also curious to see that the Praxis, I assume it's Praxis, is all partially blowed up when they fly into Kronos.
That is also in the Countdown to Darkness comic, where we see that it's actually Khan as John Harrison. Working for Section 31 blows that up.
Well, but that was a crippling blow that basically rendered the Empire a non-threat.
Well, it only partially blows up. It wasn't as devastating.
I guess, yeah.
Because there's still like that Cold War tension with the Klingons. Like we could easily get in a big scale war with these people.
I was so excited when I got to the end when I was watching Discovery, thinking, "Oh, the big war with the Klingons." That's why Marcus is so paranoid about the Klingons starting a war, and Starfleet needs to be ready for it because this war is coming. Is they just got done spending a year fighting the Klingons in Discovery, and that's why they're so worried. And they said that Discovery is meant to be...
If that happened in this timeline.
Yes, but unfortunately... Marcus actually gives a quick history of Federation-Klingon relations and mentions there's been half a dozen violent starship-to-starship combat and mentions no war whatsoever. There clearly has never been a war.
I like that, though.
Season 1 of Discovery clearly doesn't happen basically at all.
I don't see how that can be since Discovery is set in the Kelvin universe.
No, I like that they haven't had that war because without the Federation being that devastated, it kind of helps explain how more advanced everything is in the Kelvin movies.
I suppose I hadn't thought about that. You're right. I like that.
It does kind of have this reason why Marcus would think a war is inevitable if it was that close to happening.
We do have to assume that the Shenzhou or whoever ran into that Klingon in the first episode of Discovery, the guy who wants to start the war.
Takuvma.
Whoever Starfleet encountered handled that much better than Giorgio and Michael did because no war happened. So
or maybe they just didn't bump heads.
Maybe
Takuvma wanted to start a war. He would have found a way.
That's
so
true.
somebody
maybe Nero blew up Takuvma in the Kelvin timeline.
Sure.
Maybe he was working in that prison when in the deleted scenes.
In Burapente.
Yeah, and he got blowed up or shot on the escape.
Do we agree that the flight down to Kronos, the action scene where Kirk flies through narrow canyons,
very Star Warsy,
super Star Warsy,
but super awesome?
It's well done. I didn't feel like it was awesome because I felt like those fighter ships, the D4s, were so outside of Trek's style that it really bothered
There was
me.
a design for a very traditional Klingon bird of prey looking ship that they rejected and used these D4s instead.
I thought they were more Klingon looking than any of those Klingon ships in season 1 of Discovery.
That's true. They bother me less now after seeing Discovery. But these Klingons do kind of they feel threatening and deadly and dangerous at first. But then Khan shows up and just beats the shit out of all of them.
Yeah.
Well, that's to make Khan look even more dangerous.
Right. Yes. But you might have needed to see them in action a little bit more.
To prove that the alien threat is dangerous, you haven't beat up a Klingon. Remember how Next Generation worked?
But they hadn't established the coolness of the Klingons in this yet.
Well, I think they're sort of supposed to be implied from all the other films and pop culture.
I did, by the way, once again, a lot of the core bridge crew members get something cool to do. Scotty gets to do a big sabotage thing. And Uhura gets to be a cool translator to the Klingons. A lot of them get their moments.
She's also just kind of reduced to being Spock's love interest, though, other than speaking Klingon in one scene.
Yeah,
she still gets more to do than the Prime Uhura does.
Yeah, that is true.
Yes, it's.
And I'm not a fan of the Spock Uhura relationship, but I do kind of like Spock and her having their fighting in this movie, and him saying why he's being so closed off because he doesn't want to feel something as tragic as losing his planet and his mother and all that stuff again. That it was.
Those are some good scenes.
Yeah. I like the relationship, and the whole thing's worth it just for. Are you two fighting? What is that even like?
I wrote down a few lines that I liked from this movie, and one of them is when they go down to the mission. Kirk is like, "This isn't going to be a problem, is it? You two working together?" And she's like, real coldly, is like, "Absolutely not." And Spock goes, "Unclear."
Yeah, that was good. And let's talk about like Khan surrendered when they capture him, and how there's nothing more badass than just showing you're the toughest motherfucker on the battlefield, and then just being oh, you have what I want? Okay, I surrender to you. And, knowing that you're just, going to be able to get out of it whenever you
And
want.
Kirk tries to do the action hero movie one-punch thing, and, fails so badly that he looks like a broken heap at the end of it. I thought it was a very well visually filmed scene.
I remember kind of, laughing at that in the theater, but at the same time, I get what they were going for, and I liked it. It's just kind of it's just kind of a weird reaction to that when you see how
it's a weird scene.
How futile it is to, and how kind of subversive it is typical like action hero role where you would just be able to go punch out your prisoner.
Totally.
Yeah.
And at that point, they moved to good.
It establishes Kirk's still not quite where he needs to be.
Right.
Yeah.
He's still driven by his own a little bit of vengeance.
I'm not going to kill you, but I'm going to punch you and kick you a bunch.
Even though he knew better than to use those torpedoes, he followed Spock's advice, went to capture him, but he still has some growth that he needs to do.
Yeah.
When they have Khan in the brig, I hate how big this brig is. These Kelvin movies kind of feel a little bit like Discovery, where I think they have like too much money and they make things too big and too elaborate, and just like the whole idea of these ships being so big and like this brig set being so big is kind of ridiculous. But they have Khan behind this glass screen. It's very Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs,
For sure.
And I felt like I've seen that too many times. I don't ever need to see another villain who is like behind bars, but you can tell that even though he's captured, he's actually the guy in control with all the power.
I mean, how would you play that scene with Khan? What would be the alternative?
I don't know. I wouldn't have wrote like a brig scene with him because I would have been like, this is too much like Silence of the Lambs. And this came out in 2013, so it was like the year before. Like they did the same thing with like Loki and the Avengers, except that had like a cool little subversive Joss Whedon style twist at the end of it. And we're not even going to do anything like that in this movie, so maybe we should try something else.
Although Silence of the Lambs is an iconic movie, it was made in like 1993, so we're like, 20 years out from it. I think it's okay for movies to do that.
Yeah, I've seen it so much, though. I never want to see... Anytime I see it again, I'm going to complain.
But you're an old man. The millennials watching this were like... had no idea what a Silence of the Lamb is.
For me, it was... they do it... Dark Knight came out before this, right?
Yeah,
Dark Knight was what I was saying.
Yeah,
it's like Dark Knight. Well, they're doing a good job of it here, too, so okay.
And I mostly like those scenes. I think Khan being able to sort of speak imperiously, that's what you got Benedict Cumberbatch hired for.
I love those like speeches he gives in prison though, and how he talks when you see
he can almost make you buy for a few seconds into that stupid torpedo stuff.
Yeah, like he explains it so beautifully that you kind of do want to accept it.
He does like there's like tears on his cheeks when he's doing it. He's like very very cold and icy about it, but it's clearly like all this emotion is welling up within him.
And even like the stupid idea of why you would bring this guy from 300 years ago to help you beef up your military.
Yeah.
But he's explaining that Marcus wanted to exploit his savagery.
Yeah.
And that when he tells Spock, you can't even break a rule, how could you be expected to break bone?
Yeah.
But by the end of this movie, we see Spock break some bone.
Yeah.
It's true.
But we also see Khan break some bone to pay off that statement.
Khan also likens his crew to his family and says, is there anything you wouldn't do for your crew or family or whatever?
Which is a point where we relate... Well, sorry, let me...
Go ahead. No, you finish that.
Khan is more responsible than Kirk. Khan looks out for his family. The moment Khan realizes his family is not dead, he throws down his gun and surrenders and immediately starts changing... Whatever his plan on Kronos was, and I'm sure he had one, throws it out the window.
Isn't that what Kirk was doing, though? He threw the plan out the window when Spock was in a volcano in the opening.
Yeah.
And basically, Spock was
his best friend.
Yeah.
So,
that's his fam.
Kirk is also really cocky when he's talking to Pike, and he's like,
"He's worse at it for sure than."
When he says, I've never lost anyone, come on, like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And Pike is telling him, like, no, like, you're too sure of yourself. And we see Kirk face, like, the consequences here when Admiral Marcus shows up on the USS Vengeance. Yeah. And Kirk is like, oh no, I just got, like, everyone on my ship killed because I didn't see what this asshole was up to, and I went along on his evil mission, and because of my recklessness, all these people are going to die. And, when he pleads with them, he's like, just take me, let them go.
Right. Yeah.
And
that's definitely the Kirk at his most mature when he's trying to do everything he can to save his friends and taking all the responsibility on himself.
And he turns around and apologizes to them. I remember seeing that in the trailer.
Yeah.
When he's like looking at everyone in the crew and he's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, oh my god, I want to see this movie. What is he apologizing for?
Yeah.
He's apologizing for losing to the giant Dark Enterprise.
Yes.
And also, like, when they beam Carol Marcus back onto the Vengeance, that's kind of like a cool, like, old school 50s, 60s horror movie when she, like, takes off running and does, like, that scream.
She actually screams as, like, she's in pain.
Yeah.
I do, it's goofy that the ship is so giant but made to run with just like 10 people or whatever.
Yes.
But I do love the scene where they're just... it's like purely on a popcorn movie level when they're about to wreck the Enterprise and Scotty sabotages it. It's very satisfying to me, and even though I knew Scotty was going to do it.
Even though well, I actually didn't see that coming.
I guess I knew Scotty was going to play some role.
Yeah.
He was going to pop up somewhere.
It was super stupid that they get back to Earth so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do love having Chekhov as the substitute chief engineer,
Yeah.
and he's being the whiz kid, he's so in over his head trying to keep the ship up and running.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes Scotty look like more of a badass when you see how hard this is.
It also sets up when the ship fails. Is it Chekhov screwing up? We not entirely sure.
No, because you have like those
Seems
torpedoes.
unlikely. Is it the torpedoes? Is it Chekhov screwing up? So we don't immediately jump to Section 31, sabotage them.
Right.
There's enough ambiguity. It adds ambiguity.
We have the team up between Kirk and Khan.
Yeah.
And I thought they did something really smart here where instead of being like, oh my god, it's so obvious, Khan is clearly going to betray Kirk, the way that the movie plays it is like, we know that that's going to happen. So they do all these little fake outs where it's like,
Khan has run off on us.
Yeah.
Is Khan going to do it now?
Then
Is he going to betray them now? Yeah.
So the tension comes from, when will the betrayal come?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, two guys who are like, I know he's going to go for his gun. Should I, maybe I should go for mine? Nah,
And they keep Kirk smart by having him be fully aware, as aware as the audience is, that the betrayal could come at any moment.
It's satisfying when you get those moments, like when he's like, Scotty, second we walk onto the bridge, drop him.
I do love a proactive hero.
Yeah, then you feel
who predicts the
thank
problem.
God.
Yeah.
Because everybody is aware on some levels, even if subconsciously, of a lot of the tropes, and it's nice to see them avoided, even if some tropes are going to still rear their head.
Yeah.
We see Khan do some badass stuff on the Vengeance where he's doing some cool, I'm going to call it Kung Fu moves. He's flipping around, beating up these Section 31 guys. And then, of course, the betrayal does come. And
when he crunches the leg of Dr. Marcus, it's so brutal, but it felt very right.
It's weird to see that level of intensity of violence against a woman in a big mainstream movie like this. Yeah. And I thought it was very effective.
Yeah. It tells you immediately that the villain of this movie has just changed. It is no longer Marcus, who up until that point in the
Marcus
film...
has been dethroned.
Yeah, Marcus has been dethroned, and he is the new big bad guy that we have to worry about.
That's it.
Immediately sells
I did like Marcus's confrontation with Kirk. I think Peter Weller did a good job.
He's great. Peter Weller's is great.
Yes.
He's the surrogate Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men. He even does there's something like, who's going to do it, Kirk? You! And it's very echoing.
He keeps calling him son. He's so dismissive of Kirk.
Well, he knows Kirk is actually a terrible captain, so he's like, this is a joke.
And so
but it's like he's playing on Kirk thinking that about himself. He's waging this psychological warfare. He's like, if I call you son enough, he's just going to buckle.
I loved his kind of, well, shit, you talk to him. I thought that was a wonderful moment and well delivered.
It kind of shows his confidence.
Yeah.
Of I got to kill these kids now. They figured it out. But oh well.
Yeah.
It's all in a day's work. He's the bad Starfleet dad, whereas Pike is the good dad. Marcus is just the asshole stepdad that you don't like.
Yeah, something I hadn't noticed how big that structure is that the Vengeance is parked in, that Scotty breaks into. When you see it come over the surface of the planet, that thing is vast. There's probably a bunch of Vengeances parked in there. And being built. Which makes sense if you're going to fight the war with the Klingons.
It can't be one.
It can't be one.
Well, it only takes a dozen people to crew one of those.
Well, once the war gets started, it will be easy to say, look, we've got all these warships. Let's put fill them up with Starfleet personnel.
Yeah. Or you can use them to transport infantry, I guess.
It's just when they had all the clones in Attack of the Clones. They're who ordered all these clones?
Yeah.
I don't know, but we've got a war.
And look, we've got subspace transporters, and we've got phasers with subspace jacketing so they can fire at warp. Which they didn't have till TNG, or till Voyager era, I think, in the original timeline.
Just like I have a love-hate relationship with these movies, I have a love-hate relationship with The Vengeance. I kind of like the design.
It's pretty cool looking on a pure aesthetic level.
I think it's so ridiculous how big it is, and the Enterprise is already so ridiculously big. Yeah. I love the sound effect it makes when it's chasing the Enterprise through their warp drive.
When it pops up in warp,
tunnel.
Even though that's just a pure that's another kind of almost Star Warsy sort of thing, but it's an effective, cool scene.
And then the way that the Enterprise spins out of control when it's shot out of warp, and
that
you see
was so cool.
There's people get blown out of the puncture in the hole.
You know, Kirk was like, I hadn't had any losses in the first three years, that's first year. That's right. I'm thinking of the next movie.
Well, you have now,
you
son.
do now.
Yeah, that's what Marcus is saying.
He must have lost a couple dozen at least in this action.
Yeah. Again, since I just adamantly refuse to accept that the J.J. prize is that big, and imagine that it's about the size of the one in Discovery, that fixes the size problems for the Vengeance.
Well, the Vengeance is still pretty fucking huge.
That makes the Vengeance about the size of Picard's Enterprise.
One of the big problems that a lot of people had with this movie was the sacrifice Kirk makes that mirrors what happened in the Wrath of Khan. And I actually have no problem with this. In fact, I enjoyed it and teared up. And I thought it was so cool how they did the twist on it and made Kirk be the one who sacrifices himself. And he says that it was because he was trying to think of what Spock would do, and this is what seemed logical.
Yeah.
And the way that they played it so just honestly when Kirk is dying, and it felt real when he says, I'm scared, Spock. How do I not feel this? How do you do this? How do you turn off your emotions? And Spock is like, I don't know, man. I'm feeling emotional now. And I don't know.
Right now.
I accept that. I have no problem with this.
I love everything about it except the direct dialogue lifts from Star Trek II, which are kick me right out of the movie the first time I saw it. I was like, oh my God, that's from Star Trek 2. That's from Star Trek 2. That's from Star... How much lines from Star Trek 2 are you guys going to use?
How many are there? There's Jim, you better get down here.
Yeah.
And then he says, how's our ship? And Spock says, out of danger.
Yeah.
What else is there?
I think there's one or two more, but it was enough that it kicked me out of the scene entirely.
They don't go full on, I have been and always shall be your friend, the good of the many.
Yeah.
I will say I thought it was just the right amount of restraint.
When I went back and watched it again and I was ready for it, then I felt sad. Then I felt depressed and horrified and emotional. But the first time, it kicked me right out of the film when they kept using those lines. And of course
the screaming of Khan.
Yeah, and that too.
If I was making this, I would have gone one step further, and after Spock screams Khan, I would have cut to an exterior shot of the Enterprise and then had it echo the same way that Shatner's scream of Khan echoed in the Wrath of Khan.
You really would
having all the other stolen lines.
That's why you're not
neuters the Khan line.
That's why you don't get to be direct films from.
Yeah. Well, they should have. If they changed all the others, then they would have. I think they could have got away with one, and I would have used Khan. I would have kept that one and got rid of the others. Anyway, you haven't. What was your thoughts on this?
Dave, give us your opinion on the
I didn't
Kirk
like
death.
the lead up to it, where Kirk is climbing around on a machine kicking it. I felt that felt a lot less kind of classy than Spock's in Wrath of Khan.
I don't know. After seeing William Shatner swapping out isolinear chips on the Enterprise B, I was like, yeah, kicking gets more fun.
There's something about the fact that Khan, Spock seemed to like I don't know what he was doing, but there was just radiation just bathing his face. It felt more serious. It made me think
more
about
visceral.
The dangers of real radiation than an action set piece, which is what this felt like.
The danger was more tangible.
Mind you, what radiation looks like is much closer to Into Darkness than it is Star Trek 2.
But we're talking about the feel of it.
I get a little bit of where Dave is coming from, because that's part of my problem with these sets being so big and so elaborate that I felt
they have to make everything a set piece.
Yeah, their warp core looks ridiculous. The size of it.
I do want to say, I think I viewed it roughly the same way you did, Brian, which was to say, the first time I watched it, it felt I was taken out of it. Second time I watched it, or third, or whatever this is now, fourth or fifth, I'm more emotionally invested, and I'd forgotten the scene that gets me is when Kirk holds his hand up and kind of in a very dying sort of way tries to make the Vulcan salute.
Yeah.
That's the one that always kind of makes me tear up that little moment.
Yeah. And it sells for a movie about Kirk learning responsibility, Kirk going in to sacrifice his own life to save everyone
He's
else.
clearly learned
Yes,
it
yes.
at that point.
And he literally learned, like he's literally trying to emulate Spock at the end.
Yes.
In all ways.
Yes. So people say, "Oh, it's unearned and it's gratuitous." No, it actually is the dawning, the climax of Kirk's journey that started in 09.
I think we can quibble over exact what should or shouldn't be in there, but I think we might all agree at least that the scene is not like a horrific concept.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of good in it at the very least.
And they hit the emotional beat that it needs to hit.
And it follows the mythic structure. The old Kirk that we hate, the asshole Kirk we've been putting up with for 2 movies, dies, and a new Kirk is created.
Yeah, and if you see
a triple Kirk.
The Kirk we see in Star Trek Beyond is, I think, a guy who's gotten rid of all the Star Trek 09 assholiness.
Yes, he literally died and came back as a new person.
Now that said, someone still has to get punched a bunch before the movie is
yes,
over.
Well, we have to complete Spock's
fulfilling the dream that they never had of a physical confrontation in Wrath of Khan.
Just as Kirk has to get in touch with his inner Spock.
Right.
Spock has to get in touch with his inner Kirk.
Now, some Trek fans have complained about the Spock-Khan fight being dumb and gratuitous violence, and you don't need to have it turn into like a action movie climax. However, I love the idea of Spock fighting Khan because they're both strong, and we see Kirk fight Khan in Space Seed back in the 60s, and how he's like no match.
It's such an original series thing to do too.
And it would have been, they never did this on the original series, but they always showed how much stronger Spock was.
Yeah.
And it would have been so cool to match him up against someone else who was strong.
Yeah, if they'd ever brought Khan back in the original TV series, there would have been a Spock Khan fight.
And there's even like a reminder that this is TOS stuff in the movie when they are fighting on that garbage ship or whatever that they're on top of, and it starts playing the fight music that was originally introduced in the original series in the episode Amok Time, but was used multiple times after that.
But one of the most iconic fight music pieces you can have.
Yes.
I think I only noticed it as I felt like it suggested it, but I don't think I noticed it was like the actual notes or whatever.
And I love the idea of Spock doing the nerve pinch on Khan, and it clearly hurts Khan, but he's enough of a badass that he can power through it.
Yeah.
He also took shot after shot after shot of a phaser on stun from Uhura. You talked earlier about this movie being a remake of sorts of Wrath of Khan. I will say this, even on first viewing of it, when I was not really enjoying kind of the dopey shit in it, I was compelled to, because they do things different enough. They actually, I was like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen next. I might have kind of guessed some of the beats, but I didn't guess any of the specifics.
Yeah.
And so, I was interested all the way right up to the end.
See, I don't feel it's a remake. The sequence with Kirk going into the reactor is a remake of Wrath of Khan.
Right.
Everything else is just a new story with somebody called Khan in it, who, maybe he is Khan, but it's a new story with Khan doing different things.
Maybe he is Khan.
Even if we accept...
He's holding on to it.
Whatever. let's pretend, he's Khan, whatever. It's still a different Khan story.
Right.
He's a very different character.
There's no Genesis, there's no Regular One, and all that.
He's just a very different antagonist.
He's not trying to get revenge on Kirk. He's not trying to take over the Enterprise, which were the two things, Khan's two goals in the other two Khan stories.
When I first saw this movie, one of the things I did shortly after was rewatch The Wrath of Khan, and I was comparing the Cumberbatch performance I had just seen with the Ricardo Montalban performance, and they're so different, but it can still kind of make sense. The Montalban Khan, he's been stranded on SETI Alpha 5 for years, and he's clearly gone a little insane.
Yes.
And he is a very joyful Khan, when the Reliant is closing in on the Enterprise and he's just smiling gleefully and he's so enjoying being the villain. This Khan is a much more angry guy. He just got woke up from cryosleep.
He hates the world he's been born into.
Yes, and he's from the moment he was woke up, he's been wronged by another bad guy, and so this guy is just the way Cumberbatch plays
dynamics are very different.
Pissed off. Yeah. You have one guy who's just an insane villain who loves being an insane villain, and this guy you just have an incredibly angry, deadly guy.
Yeah.
They're as different as night and day, but you can still believe it's the same character if you want because the circumstances are so radically different.
Yeah.
but I gotta close out on a major bitch I have with this movie, and that is the use of the super blood. I know I brought it up earlier, but we were talking about things that you didn't see coming. I saw that coming as soon as Dr. McCoy is messing around with that tribble, and it feels like so out of place in the scene.
Yeah.
Just like,
oh God, that
Bones, what are you
sticks
doing
out.
with that tribble?
Yeah.
It's like they could have just had like a big sign that said Chekhov's gun right
Yes.
here, pointed at
Oh
the
my
tribble.
God, that scene is terrible. He's literally having a big, intense conversation, and then turns and says, "What are you doing with that tribble in the middle of the
It's
conversation?"
weird. It's kind of weird.
It's painfully bad. I think mythologically speaking, the bad Kirk dying and us getting a new, better Kirk works really well. The fact that he dies in a way that's fairly similar to how his father dies brings it back to the very beginning of 09. He's dying to save the rest of his crew on the ship. I thought that was a nice touch.
He's finally lived up to his father.
Yes, finally he lives up to his father. So,
and then, like, after he's, like, done with that baggage, he can now go and be Captain Kirk,
Yes.
which is kind of what they play around with in the next movie, Star Trek Beyond.
yes.
That we'll talk about next week. But,
What did y'all think about the classic Star Trek lines, the space, the Final Frontier, which was... is this the first time they made it a formal captain's oath?
Yes, and it's the first time that we hear Chris Pine say it, because the last movie ended with Nimoy saying it one last time.
Yes.
Oh, and we should talk about Nimoy's brief appearance in this movie. Some people had problems with that, but I liked it. I love Nimoy's description of Khan as he's the most dangerous adversary the Enterprise ever fought, because I feel like, we only saw Khan in 2 appearances. Picard mentions him one time, and then he gets mentioned one time on DS9, but I always felt like he was a bigger deal than Star Trek made it out to be. And I love Spock saying, when he was asked, well, how did you defeat him? And he's like, at great cost. He's like, I had to fucking die.
It's almost a meta comment in the sense that it like acknowledges that this movie had like the biggest impact of like most of the Trek movies.
Yeah.
And certainly when you kill off a main character through your actions, even if you didn't directly do it, that puts you
Not just
at
any
like
main character, but the most popular character.
right. You are elevated to the biggest of the bads.
Yeah, everyone always remembers Soren, but
I kind of didn't. I didn't like him going to future Spock for advice.
I didn't really like it either.
I don't like when they.
I mean, I'll never say no to more Leonard Nimoy as Spock, so I made my peace with it. But it didn't fit in the movie. He didn't say anything we needed to hear. It felt gratuitous and didn't really go and add anything.
He was there to meta say somebody's going to have to die.
I mean, if he'd given some key piece of information that we can clearly see, that's how this young Spock, uses this, then fine. But he didn't.
You know what I wish he had said? He's like, have you heard about the prefix code? But yeah, like you said, it was nice to see him again one last time. And since they had acknowledged that he was going to be playing it fast and loose with the time stuff anyway, it didn't bother me. But it didn't bother me too much. But didn't like it.
Yeah, I liked it, but I get why a lot of people didn't. But
in general, I feel like this movie kind of bludgeons me into liking it. Sometimes, it's emotionally manipulative.
Just like Kirk was trying to bludgeon Khan.
Yeah. Like it's a two-fist of drama and great special effects and sound effects and music to my face, and like I cannot completely resist it.
It's those stupid torpedoes and how nothing makes sense about them, and so much of the plot is connected to them all the way through. That's why I can't like this thing more.
Yeah, it is a bunch of cool scenes, well done performances. I think everyone likes this cast.
Yeah, sure.
Good lines, good dialogue,
great special effects, really cool emotional moments. But yeah, the plot of this movie is silly and dumb, and it feels a bit redundant at times.
Well, lots of it are really good. Marcus's evil plan is good. Khan's desperate attempt to get revenge is good. It's just once you get close to the torpedoes, it all falls apart and turns to shit. So
it's like we fall out of warp.
Yes.
They waited 4 years between 2009 and 2013 to do this movie. That was plenty of time to think up a stronger script.
Yeah.
But I think we do get a stronger script in the next movie, Star Trek Beyond, which also brought in some different writers, probably, and a different director, so maybe there's some benefit to bringing in some fresh blood. We'll be talking about that next week. But I think we do need to close off on Star Trek Into Darkness. But be sure to check us out Sunday when we're talking about our last of the Star Trek movies, and we're finally done with this this project of the Tex-Trek Summer at the Movies.
Yeah. This is how we think about Star Trek movies in Texas.
So we'll see you then, and as always, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fatherlyactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.